Welcome all my friends, welcome all again to another video finally, and this one is kind of in response to Darcy Sca's video of basically 5 releases that somehow I've missed along the way. You know, I kind of always thought of myself as kind of a musical explorer, and you know, Spotify always labels me something of that ilk, and you know, I'm always interested in different genres, and you know, I was trying to kind of explore the best of every genre, and the touchstone records of every genre, like, you know, King Crimson, for example, you know, one of the prog rock giants. And, you know, when people are talking prog, it's like, well, you check out In the Court of the Crimson King, and Close to the Edge by Yes, and you know, Genesis, of course. I would say Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, probably. And people always have these pre-established notions because of what they've been told through other music fans, and other YouTube videos, for example, and also, of course, you know, reviews and AllMusic Guide. You know, when I was when the internet was in its infancy a little bit more, I didn't have it right away, but when I did get it, I always relied on going to AllMusic Guide and looking up, you know, my favorite genres and my favorite bands, and which ones had the 5 stars. You know, those are the ones you'd go to first, of course. And so yeah, for example, when I was getting into jazz, of course, I was huge into Coltrane and of course Miles Davis. You know, those are the two that everyone always talks about. And eventually I started to you know, those ones always remain my favorites, of course, but I started to check out other jazz artists, and I had my favorites and not so favorites, of course. But Mingus was one that always kind of surpassed me, other than this one album he did called Money Jungle. And as I do this list, the haters are gonna start going, "You haven't listened to that? How?" But there's not enough time to listen to every single thing, of course. And I could have really put on pretty much any Mingus to this list. And I went with Black Saint and the Sinner Lady because that seems to be the most revered, I guess you could say. I definitely could have gone for Tijuana Moods or Oh Yeah or The Clown, but I didn't want to because there was a clown on the LP cover. And I could have gone for Mingus. Did I say one too many Minguses there? 5 Minguses. These are all very revered jazz records, and just touchstone recordings. But it seems like Black Saint and the Sinner Lady is the one that everyone talks about, and you see the cover all over the place. And yeah, so that's the first one. Kate Bush, Hounds of Love. Kate Bush, I always knew a lot of her hits. I remember first hearing The Man with the Child in His Eyes, which I believe is off her first record, and she was performing it on SNL in the mid to late 70s, and that's when I became kind of aware of her, though I always remember reading about her because David Gilmour was one of my favorite musicians, and Pink Floyd was one of my favorite bands, and I always remember reading that, you know, he maybe helped discover her, but he definitely helped her get her start. And you know, I knew her from the Peter Gabriel single, and I loved that. I loved Cloud Busting. You know, Cloud Busting and Running Up That Hill are 2 of the best songs of the 80s, probably. Yet I've never listened to Hounds of Love. I think the only other song other than those 2 big singles is probably The Big Sky. I remember hearing that sometimes. And loved them all, of course, but never heard the LP. Next up is going to be Nick Drake, Pink Moon. Somehow Nick Drake's always kind of passed me by. He's definitely recommended, much lauded artist. And, you know, his LPs aren't really that long. They seem to be mostly like half an hour. I could just put it on right after this video and tell you what I think. But, you know, I'm kind of a guy of moods, and I get in these certain... You know, I always got in these kind of... I never put myself in a box, but I always got myself in these certain moods and certain times where I'd just be jonesing for getting everything from one artist. You know, I try to get everything from The Clash or hear everything by the Beatles. And then when I, listened to them all a bunch of times and formed opinions on everything, it was on to the next thing. And because there's so much music out there, and there's so much music that people tell you is good and that you want to check out. So Nick Drake's always kind of passed me by. Pink Moon is going to be the one I choose, of course. And I've definitely heard the title track and definitely like it. I've heard some of his other pieces on soundtracks and that, but he's always kind of passed me by. And I think one of the reasons is on a lot of forums and websites that I've loved to frequent, people do seem to listen to Nick Drake or count him as a favorite, but no one I've ever really run into IRL, as we all say, ever was like, yeah, Nick Drake, that's one of my top 5 favorite artists. Check him out right now. Here's a record or CD to rip, or a record to borrow. And maybe that's why, because, you gravitate towards what's going on in your life and in your circles. And if ever one of my buddies said, oh, this is my favorite band, or that's my favorite band, I'd go home and put that band on and be like, oh yeah, it's really good, or I love this too. This is one of my favorite LPs. So that's my number 3 choice. These last two, maybe more than the Kate Bush pick, are really going to make people say, what the, or I can't really, value your opinion anymore, but we've all got these. The Strokes. I like the Strokes, and I've actually heard some Strokes albums all the way through, but I've never heard Is This It, which is the debut, and I think the reason was they were just so overplayed and overhyped when that came out, and I remember the interview with them, and they seemed kind of pompous. They were talking to Nardwuar or something, and this is like 2001 era, I guess it was, and Last Night was out, Someday was out, I think maybe Hard to Explain was the other single, and I really liked that one, but the other two were so overplayed. I heard them every hour. I heard the Strokes are the best band ever. They're here to save rock and roll, and I kind of thought, well, then I don't care. This is so overhyped. I don't even care anymore. And I gravitated towards the Vines, loved their first album. I gravitated towards the White Stripes a little bit, like some of their albums. Grew to really love their albums after a little bit of time. I even like the Hives a little better than the Strokes. We had all the bands. Garage rock was back, and garage rock revival was the phrase you heard all the time. And most of these bands started to kind of fade away after a few years. But the Strokes, they never were quite as revered as when that debut came out. But they had a lot of success and continue to. And a lot of their albums I've heard I've really liked. But those are kind of latter period albums. But yeah, Is This It is still, it still goes on the list for one of the best albums of 2001. I think it came out, but I'll probably post this video and be like, oh, it was '02, darn. And one of the best records of the 2000s. It's always on those lists. So the Strokes. And then I saved this one for number 5. This one might be the one that really infuriates people. And I do like this artist, Prince. And I picked Purple Rain because, Purple Rain has that amazing, long, bombastic, grandiose title track, which is amazing. Did I say that already? And he did it at the Super Bowl in the rain, and that was fabulous. I remember watching it. I was never a big Prince fan growing up, but as soon as I saw him at the Super Bowl, I became a Prince fan. I really liked his stuff. But I never really listened to him beyond hits collections. And I can't say I own anything by Prince. When he passed away, I played the hits collection over and over, and it had lots of great stuff in it. I've never seen the movie Purple Rain. I obviously know 3 or 4 of those songs, but it's kind of like Thriller by Michael Jackson. You hear 6 out of 8 of those songs all the time growing up, and you kind of feel like you've heard the record anyway, but you got to sit down and listen to them in succession and formulate an opinion on them that way, and listen to them in the context of the record. And that really helped me appreciate Michael Jackson's work a little more, because some of it you hear so much growing up, it's like, it's overplayed, whatever. King of Pop, King this. But Prince is just like that. Some of those songs were played a lot, but, you got to listen to the album and appreciate the art of sequencing and what he was doing in the studio. And I think that Purple Rain is probably the one to start with, but correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know what your thoughts are on these 5 artists, not 3, 5, and 5 releases, and also anything that's maybe passed you by, that maybe I could say what maybe to start with as a jumping point. And yeah, we'll just talk about albums and artists that might have passed us by all this time, because like I said, you can never hit it all. Like, you try, but and as a music lover and consumer of music, you know, that's kind of the thing you have to come to terms with in your life, is you'll never hear everything, even if you just play everything once and go on to the next thing. Whereas I like to really sink my teeth into things and listen to them a bunch of times and formulate, you know, my favorites and what I like about things and why it makes me feel this way. So yeah. Next video will be the best of 2023, which I've been meaning to post all month, but the holidays and Stressmas and all that, and a bunch of other hurdles this month really got in the way. But yeah, it's great to be back on YouTube talking about music again. Finally, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Peace and love to you, and happy holidays if you celebrate those. And yeah, all the best for the new year.